Escalating global trade tensions are reshaping Southeast Asia's economic landscape. But amid uncertainty, ASEAN leaders see clear opportunities emerging through regional collaboration and digital innovation.
Being a chairman of ASEAN this year, we want to leverage on this positioning in terms of how do we make sure that we can increase the trade among ASEAN. I know Malaysia is a very open economy. Our trade to GDP ratio is about 150%, so that shows that we are pretty much open to international trade. So I believe moving forward, while we navigate the current trade war between China and US, I believe there are some rooms that we can leverage on in terms of creating new opportunities to enhance the bilateral, multilateral trade within ASEAN.
Attracting digital investments is just one part of the equation. ASEAN leaders are equally focused on nurturing local innovation by developing robust digital ecosystems.
So if there's a partner or investor from the outside of Indonesia wants to understand about Indonesia market and want to have a partnership, usually they confuse where to navigate, right? So our ministry built like a global landing pad in Jakarta, in Jogja, and also in Surabaya and Bali. So we can help them to understand about the Indonesia market and the potential, and also opportunity to work with the local startup or local players to have a bigger collaboration, especially we are focused right now in ASEAN first.
Looking ahead, Southeast Asia is leveraging these challenges to strengthen intra-regional cooperation, streamline digital trade, and emerge more resilient. By doing so, ASEAN is strategically positioning itself to thrive in the global digital economy. Please enjoy this episode from the AIBP ASEAN B2B Growth Podcast.
The AIBP ASEAN B2B Growth Podcast is a series of fireside chats with business leaders in Southeast Asia focused on growth in the region. Topics discussed include business strategy, sales and marketing, enterprise technology, and innovation.
So let's just start today's session. We only have roughly about 45 minutes to an hour, and let's see if we can cover as much ground as possible over the next hour or so. So as I mentioned again, thank you very much to our guests today. Before we actually go into the session with them and to get them to introduce themselves, just an overview of AIBP for those of you who know us. AIBP is a platform which allows and serves as an avenue for public and private enterprises in Southeast Asia to access information, access the level of innovation within their own organizations, as well as advocate for innovative digital transformation journeys. We have a lot of channels of engagement, and today's session falls under AIBP Online, which you can access via the comfort of your own office or home. And basically, the aim of today's session is, my job is very, very simple. My job is to get out of the way to make sure that our four panelists today will be able to share their thoughts on what's happening globally as well as regionally. So going into today's topic, I think there's been a lot of discussions, a lot of conversations that has been happening globally, a lot of uncertainties that's been happening within Southeast Asia as well. You see a lot of new political stakeholders in Singapore as well. We ourselves are going through our own elections. May 3rd is our election day, so only a week away from that. So that has been, I guess, compounded by the global uncertainty. We've seen a lot of things happening over the last 4 to 6 weeks, especially with the new US President, Donald Trump. So I think, we'd like to start on a very easy note, and this is not a political discussion. I'd like to just state that upfront. But I think there's been a lot of confusion about what the Trump tariffs has meant for regional economies, regional companies in this part of the world. And also because there's been a lot of uncertainty about whether they are on or off. I think we've seen a lot of things happening over the last 30 days or so where, some day the tariffs are on, some day the tariffs are 10%, the next day it's like 145%. And there's been a lot of confusion in the market. So we'd just like to clarify certain things here. Taking a step back again, when we look at an overview of the ASEAN markets, I think one thing that I always stress for people to get in mind is that ASEAN is made a little bit differently from most global markets. So what you read in global media, let's say through the Wall Street Journal, through the New York Times, or even through Singapore media outlets like Straits Time or Channel News Asia, I think people don't take into context the root of how it affects different markets in Southeast Asia. So this is just basically a chart to show the variances within GDP, within population, within median average age, demographics within markets in Southeast Asia. So as you can see, the spread in Southeast Asia is pretty big, right? When you look at the GDP per capita basis, at the top you have Singapore, which is a $85,000 GDP per capita economy, as well as the emerging economies, which I've not even included here, which roughly stands at about 2,000 to 4,000 GDP per capita. In terms of population as well, you have Brunei, I believe, which has about 500,000 people. Singapore has roughly 5-6 million people, all the way to Indonesia, which has something like 280 million people. So while, ASEAN is usually seen as a bloc, there's a huge fragmentation with regards to how the economies are made up. Moving forward from that, having said that, I think the impact of the tariffs as well are going to play out differently in each of the markets. Because if you look at the different tiering of the initial tariff plans, Singapore was slapped with the lowest tariffs at about 10%, which is the minimum for any country globally. And then that increases, and you can see different parts of Southeast Asia, Vietnam at 46%, Laos 48%, and fairly developed economies as well, like Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, ranging anywhere between 17 to 36%. So I think that's going to have obviously an impact. The US is the world's largest economy, accounting for roughly 30-40% of global GDP. And the US is a major trading partner for companies in Southeast Asia, native to Southeast Asia. So on the right here, you can see how much each of the markets in Southeast Asia export to the US. And if you apply the tariffs on top of this amount, you can see that's not an insignificant amount. But again, tariffs are not the only thing we are here to talk about. We're talking about how the economic makeups of this country, and also I think it's generally believed that tariffs are not great for innovation or for progress. And in the next slide, we have effectively one of the elder statesmen from Singapore. Can I go on to the next slide, please? Yeah, so this was actually a quote from our founding Prime Minister, one of our founding members of Singapore's ruling party. And this was a quote that we took from 1985 that he made in Washington, D.C., whereby the general belief is that the answer to job losses is more, not less trade, right? So in the long run, I believe if you look at economic principles, if you look at, especially for emerging markets, you look through the Industrial Revolution, what he said was that new jobs can be created only by increased trades among nations, right? So if you block imports, if you reduce trade, you reduce jobs. And if you reduce jobs, effectively, that's just a negative for your own economy as well as your trading partners as well. This was in 1985, just a mere, 40 years ago, if my math is correct. But on the next slide, I like to list these two books because these two books talk about innovation, and it takes a longer term view of how innovation works. So Matt Ridley is one of my favorite authors around innovation, and he talks about how innovation actually started, even in prehistoric times, the root of innovation all came across from trade, right? Even when we were looking at the times of the Neanderthals or even the times of early hunter-gatherers, the reason communities function or the reason communities can grow is the ability for them to trade. So he makes these arguments in two of his books, The Rational Optimist, as well as How Innovation Works. So for anybody who's interested in these topics, I highly recommend that you take a look at this. And last but not least, before I hand over to our guests, I think there were some recent meetings among ASEAN ministers as well as ASEAN finance ministers and central bank governors. And I think there has been a lot of central themes which are agreed upon most of the countries within ASEAN as well. So you can see here quotes by all the different central bankers as well as the ministers. There's a lot of opportunities for ASEAN integration. There's a lot of opportunities for trade to happen in intra-ASEAN as well. So no matter, for those of you who are joining us from Malaysia, especially, no matter what Bill O'Reilly has to say about Malaysians not being able to afford US goods. I don't think that is something that we agree with here in ASEAN, and this is what this call is about. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists today. What I'd like to do is to go through one by one, effectively each of our panelists to give a quick introduction of who they are, what segment they are working with within their countries, and of course their view on this recent tariffs, what they've been looking at and what they are seeing internally as well. So first up, we have our long-time advisory board member, Dr. Supakorn. So Dr. Supakorn, thank you for joining us, and maybe you can kick us off with a quick introduction about yourself and how have things been for you since what do they call it? Liberation Day in the US? Have you been busy? What have you been up to?
Yeah, hi, Elsa. So thanks for having me, and hello everyone. Both panelists and all the audience. I work for one of the government agencies in Thailand called Digital Economy Promotion Agency. So basically, we are promoting digital transformation in Thailand. So I think the topic today is very much we are involved in, and it's a timely topic. So I think so far we enjoy seeing this situations changing, and I really love the first slide that Ursa showed us today. It is very fitting. So that's my short introduction.
Thank you, Dr. Supakorn. And in the last, I think DIPA has been plays a central role in growing Thailand's digital economy as well, right? So do these tariffs, or with not just the tariffs, but whatever been happening over the last 4 to 6 months, does it affect, let's say, in terms of preparedness or the things that you're doing internally? What are you looking at, to make sure that you hit your targets? I believe Thailand has quite aggressive digital economy goals as well, right?
Yeah, so I think it also coincides with a new government that we just had. So I think they're having quite a challenging time, to deal with not just internal challenges, but also there's an external challenge as well. So does it have a direct impact to us as an organization? Yes, it does, because we are dealing with many of the international partners, both public and private partners. So some of them have to delay some decisions because of this policies made by the President Trump.
Yeah.
But other than that, I see it as a positive, because I'm always an optimist. So I still see that it promotes or accelerates the regional integration in this case, which is long overdue. But so this acts as a very good stimulus for us.
Perfect. I think I share your views on that as well. Next up, we have Director Emmy, who is dialing in from Manila. Director Emmy represents DICT, who I believe just has a new DICT secretary as well, right? How are you, Director Emmy? Maybe you can quickly introduce yourself as well as DICT.
Thank you, Urza. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hello from Manila. So I'm Emmy Lou V Delfin. I head the ICT Industry Development Bureau of the Department of Information and Communications Technology. One of the missions of the DICT is to ensure the growth and development of the ICT industry that will result to the creation of jobs, bringing these jobs outside of Metro Manila or to the countryside. And thank you for saying that, Irza. Yes, we have a new secretary. In fact, over the past 3 weeks, we've been doing a lot of, briefing and presentation, and actually even recalibrating some of our programs according to his new thrust and priority. If I may quickly, so we have DICT based on his new thrust. I would say, just emphasize very quickly for our Secretary Henry Aguda. Letter D stands for driving a digital first economy. Letter I stands for inclusive technology for all. And then letter C, championing data privacy and protection. And then letter T stands for transparency and governance. So, but in all of this, actually, in the next 3 years, our goal is to have more jobs, generate employment for the Filipinos here in the Philippines.
Right.
So, yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Irza.
Thank you, Director Emmy. And just a gentle reminder, outside of Indonesia, which has 270, 280 million people, the Philippines has what's it now, Director Emmy? 110 million your population?
Yeah. Yes, it's 110 million population.
And one of the fastest growing as well, with one of the youngest in terms of demographics.
That's right.
So from Director Emmy, next up we have Pak Sonny from KOMDIGI. Pak Sonny is dialing in from Bali. Pak Sonny, can we have a quick introduction from you?
Thank you, Irza. Thank you, everyone. My name is Sonny Sudaryana. Now, we are from the Directorate of Digital Ecosystem Development. This is a new unit focused on to build the digital ecosystem, not only from the startup or digital perspective, but also to make sure the ecosystem between the telcos who built the infrastructure can have the same benefit with the startups or the global company that running through the infrastructure that we built. So the objective to build the ecosystem in that two perspective.
And Pak Sonny, I think Indonesia is a very interesting market because, again, it's the largest contribution to ASEAN's total GDP, the largest GDP, largest population. Have the uncertainties, I think it's clear that there has been uncertainties over the last 4 to 6 weeks with regards to all these tariffs that are coming out. Have they had an impact on the work that you are doing in terms of the policy or in terms of the practical applications of whatever you are doing within KOMDIGI?
I think it's very impact, especially on the technology, because we have a lot of trade with the US in terms of technology, and then but the Indonesia fundamental is large and stable. Right now, the political stability, we are stable and neutral. We have like a 6 peaceful election since the 1999, and economic stability. 5% GDP growth and stable inflation rate around 3.2%, and then increasing of the FDI investment. I think the last decade has given Indonesia a good tailwind. However, some new headwinds emerge from the domestic issues, like new government blues, because we have a new president, and also we have 100 of new province election and municipal as like a honeymoon phase. And then the second is from the outside is international dynamics, US tariff challenge and opportunities. I think we see this tariff challenge as a wake-up call to boost intra-ASEAN trade.
Perfect. Again, as I mentioned, exactly as what Dr. Supakorn mentioned, I think that's exactly what I think we are hearing from a lot of our, whether it's public representatives as well as private organizations within Southeast Asia. And moving on to the last panelist on our panel today, definitely not the least, Encik Wan, who's dialing in from MDEC. I believe MDEC has responsibilities for both driving investments into the country as well as helping companies expand regionally. Encik Wan, can I get you to briefly introduce yourself?
Thank you, Irza. My name is Wan Murdani. I from Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, MDEC. So we are an agency under the newly formed Ministry of Digital. Our mandate is to drive digital economy. So in doing so, I think as you rightfully said, we need to bring in high value digital investments, and also how to growing our companies to serve not only Malaysia market but also regional market as well. And thirdly is promoting digital adoption among the key sectors. So all in all, these three broad agendas are key parameters for us to be able to drive our digital economy. So on the aspirational goal, I think we are targeting for digital economy to contribute about 25% to our national GDP by end of this year. So we have to make sure that there are a lot of economic activities in the digital space have to take place in Malaysia to make sure that the companies can grow, the ecosystem can grow, and we can always support the inward investments into Malaysia. So thank you for having me here in this exciting panel. I'll be happy to share any insight from the Malaysian perspective on this thing.
Yeah, and Cik since we are with you, and I think you mentioned the three broad themes that MDEC is trying to do, and I'm not going to overcomplicate things with what's happening over the last 4 to 6 weeks, but in terms of driving the digital economy, I see there's a lot of things going on with Malaysia, especially since Malaysia is taking chairmanship of ASEAN, right, for this year. What are the things that you are focusing on within MDEC, and what kind, when you talk about investments from overseas, are there certain markets? Obviously the US is everybody wants investments from the US, but regionally as well, does MDEC focus on certain markets where you're trying to drive FDI?
Obviously, I think ASEAN is one of our main market for us to drive the investments. And if you look further outside for ASEAN, we have gotten quite significant number of investments from United States, from China, and also from some part of Europe. So our focus is always about bringing in the investment that will create the high value jobs. So if you look at our strategy, we want to make sure that every investment that we're attracting is the one that's going to establish a digital footprint in Malaysia to make sure that they can address the challenges, the problems of particular key economic sectors for them to adopt. So we need that kind of investment in certain technologies to make sure that our sectoral reform through digitalization can take place in a more timely and orderly manner. So in that case, we're very excited to see some of the investments coming in lately in the areas of data center, cloud computing, artificial intelligence. So those are the type of focus sectors that we believe would drive the digital adoption in Malaysia, hence provide opportunities for the investors to come and set up their office, their shops in Malaysia, for them to be able to capture those markets. Not only in Malaysia, as you rightfully say just now, being a chairman of ASEAN this year, we want to leverage on this positioning in terms of how do we make sure that we can increase the trade among ASEAN. I know Malaysia is a very open economy. Our trade to GDP ratio is about 150%. So that shows that we are pretty much open to international trade. So I believe moving forward, while we navigate the current trade war between China and US, I believe there are some rooms that we can leverage on in terms of creating new opportunities to enhance the bilateral, multilateral trade within ASEAN. So I think that is a focus that we're putting in at this point of time.
Perfect. One final question before I guess this is a question for all the panelists to think about. Encik Wan mentioned that they are looking for digital investments or certain segments like data centers, cloud, AI, which might help certain sectors of the Malaysian economy. Encik Wan, are there certain sectors or industries in Malaysia that you think can benefit the most from, let's say, all these external technology solution providers within cloud, within AI, or any parallel technologies?
So there are top 2 or 3 sectors that we believe can be accelerated in terms of digital adoption by having that kind of investments. The first one is obviously financial services, because of the complexity of the technology in terms of providing safe and secure environment for any financial transaction to take place. This is where I think the technology investment in that sector would be something that we look forward, and how do we enhance cybersecurity along that line. So, and then secondly is our agriculture, because we know that agriculture has been a traditional sector for us for the past 20-30 years. There are so much improvement in terms of having the right technology landscape to make sure that we can increase our yields in the crops, aquaculture, or livestock. through the usage of certain technologies such as drone technology, analytic, and things like that, to make sure that we can adopt as a country. We have a pocket of communities that are able to drive the adoption of technologies in the agriculture. And thirdly, I would say is in the smart city, because I think we are moving from the normal services in smart city, where we want to showcase the capabilities not only by Malaysian companies but also the companies who are using Malaysia as their launchpad, to make sure that they can address the challenges of the city in some of the key services to the citizen. For example, how do we manage certain criteria in terms of giving opportunities for the population to be able to participate in digital economy. I think that three key sectors are the one that we are putting our bet on. Not to say other sectors are not important, but I think that will provide us a shorter runway in terms of realizing the impact of digital adoption in those three sectors.
When you say financial services, agriculture, I think if you add a little bit of a manufacturing to that, I think of the Thai economy as well, right? Because Malaysia and Thailand both, I guess, in terms of economic progress, well, I wouldn't say exactly at the same stage, but close, especially within Southeast Asia. Dr. Supakorn, are there certain sectors that you are focusing on as well? And in terms of, I've actually received a lot of requests recently from companies, startups, quite early stage startups, looking to expand into Malaysia and Thailand. And they always ask, hey, which sectors are actually the most promising within these two countries? So Dr. Supakorn, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think, our economy depends a lot on the manufacturing, electronics, and of course also agriculture and, tourism or services as well. So I think these are the four main industries that we really need to support them to actually, overcome, the challenges that they're facing now. So, of course, technologies will help, with, the lower the barriers, in terms of border trading. I think that's what we are, looking at, to actually streamline, the cross-border trading.
In terms of, I think Thailand is an interesting market, because if you look at the last few years, I think there's been a lot. Thailand has done very well in attracting a lot of, quote unquote, digital nomads, right? It's always been a big attraction for these kind of companies. And I've seen a lot of foreign startups set up entities, you have, I think, quite a seamless experience when it comes to digital visas or entrepreneurial visas for people setting up entities in Thailand. But when it comes to providing solutions, do you see a lot of, let's say, investments from or people or companies from overseas markets? And within ASEAN as well, do you see a lot of an increase in ASEAN companies setting up shop in Thailand and being able to add values to local Thai company over the last maybe 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, certainly, there are a lot of digital nomads in Thailand. I think they enjoyed, working out of, on the beach, or in the mountains. So I think that's, something that we are lucky to have. But of course, we need to provide them with, some of the services like visa, which we hear a lot, as it used to be like one of the top pain points of people staying over here, visas and immigration processes. But apart from that, I think Thailand still needs to attract, more of the investments, from the international companies in terms of, technology as well. Even though we have a lot of smaller startups or people in technology working out of Thailand, but we don't yet realize the benefits of in the broader term for the economy.
So I think that's been a thing over the last few, like I mentioned, 1 or 2 years. I think there's been a bit of a transition. If you look at the Philippines or even in Malaysia, whereby English is the first language, I think in Thailand there's been a lot of startups who have started in there. But then I think to some extent either the cultural barriers or the language barriers have prevented more startups or more companies to set up shop in Thailand. But I can say for sure that there's been a lot of interest in the market. Going from Thailand and Malaysia, I'd like to touch on, again, the biggest market in Southeast Asia, Pak Sonny from KOMDIGI, especially since your job, like you mentioned, is to integrate, right, the ecosystem, the infrastructure players in Indonesia with global companies who are looking to, I guess, add value in Indonesia. What are the things that KOMDIGI has been focusing on in benefiting this ecosystem, in making this ecosystem a little bit more robust?
I think digital economy should be grow in our country, but we have to make sure the benefit is stay in the country. That's our main concern, and so we see that digital economy in Indonesia contribute around 5% to the GDP. And the uniqueness of Indonesia is the contribution is from the digital startups. So what we are now focused is to have more startups born and scale in Indonesia. But the most important, how to help them survive. A lot of startups, the success rate in Indonesia is very low, below 5%. So we need to increase the survival rate of the startups by connecting them to the right resources, help them to understand the market and focus on the product market fit and also network of funding.
And for this, are you referring only to, let's say, local native startups, or are you also, to some extent, do you have any programs for overseas companies who are looking to provide solutions? Not necessarily startups, right? I think there are a lot of American, European companies as well who are fairly mature and then looking to expand to, say, in Indonesia. Do you have programs for them to land in Indonesia?
So we have this year we have like a global landing pad. We open in 3 cities. So if there's a partner or investor from the outside of Indonesia wants to understand about Indonesia market and want to have a partnership, usually they confuse where to navigate, right? So our ministry built like a global landing pad in Jakarta, in Jogja, and also in Surabaya and Bali. So we can help them to understand about the Indonesia market and the potential, and also opportunity to work with the local startup or local players to have a bigger collaboration, especially we are focused right now in ASEAN first.
Okay. So for ASEAN countries to have Indonesia as a landing pad, yeah?
Yeah.
Perfect. Fantastic. Sounds good. I see we have some questions. For all the audience who have some questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. I have one more question for Director Emmy, and then after that, we'll go on to questions. So please put in your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Director Emmy, I think Philippines is a very unique market in Southeast Asia for a few reasons. Your economic makeup is very, very different, right? There's a lot of, it's largely services based and very, very large population as well, very young demographics. So when it comes to all these questions around like tariffs or, what's been happening recently, what things have you been focusing on to ensure that, the digital economy goals for the Philippines can be realized? Are there any shifts or are there any certain things that have arose because of this uncertainty over the last month or so?
Yeah, thank you, Urza. Well, as you know, we are actually the Philippines is really strong in the services sector, right? So we talk about particularly the IT BPM or the BPO sector, and you know that still the Philippines still a global leader when it comes to voice-based services in the BPO sector. So right now we have 1.82 million jobs, and our next target is to be able to generate additional, so total is 2.5 million jobs for the BPO sector. And that actually comprises, it's part of the digital economy. So right now, here in DICT, our focus really is to make sure that we play a significant role in the digital economy. So in fact, one of the things that we'll do is really help digitalize MSMEs, and of course, particularly work with e-commerce platform companies. As you know, because of our wholesale and retail trade, this is also one of the significant drivers of domestic consumption and employment as well. And we talk about, of course, tourism as well. Particularly, it has revitalized travel. So we are promoting also digital nomad. In fact, just the other day, we're grateful that there's an executive order from the president actually encouraging digital nomads by really increasing the length of stay of our digital nomads here in the country. So it's really a good news for us to be able to promote our tourist locations in different parts of the country. And of course, another part of the services is financial services, including banking and insurance sectors. So those are the focus really, particular our department in the digital economy space.
Perfect. Thank you, Director Emmy. Okay, as I mentioned, I think we'll go to some questions. I think we have roughly about 20 minutes left. So the first question, and this is open to any of the panelists, I guess, whoever wants to take it. And this question has come up quite a bit, right? This is a question from Mr. Chung Heng Han. I would like to hear the feedback from the panelists. What are you doing, or what are you advising in terms when it comes to mitigating the tariffs issue? How are you reshaping supply chains and advising certain industries to transform business models to mitigate the physical flow of goods? And as we mentioned earlier, right, I think the tariffs apply largely to goods, outbound goods from your own countries. Is this something that has been discussed internally? And what are the kind of advice or policies or ideas that have come up recently with regards to this? Any of the panelists? Now?
Maybe I can just give from the perspective of digital economy.
Yeah.
I think okay. For example, like Malaysia, the sectors affected is because we are the second largest energy exporter to United States, and 40% of those is on the semiconductor. So the good thing is semiconductor is exempted from that tariff. So I think on that sense, we are lucky because we have a quite healthy semiconductor ecosystem in Malaysia. But if I were to look from the digital economy perspective, I think we need to reshape the supply chain ecosystem to have more intra-ASEAN kind of flows of goods and services. I know it doesn't affect the services that much, but I think digital trade is something that we have to make sure that we can have the right policies, such as a good cross-border e-commerce transaction. So those would at least give a cushion in terms of creating new economic opportunities for us to manage and mitigate the impact of the tariff imposition to ASEAN. So, I mean, it can be done through the policy changes. I think ASEAN countries, ASEAN member states can have a common understanding, common policy framework in terms of recognizing each other's capability and ecosystem to make sure that online transactions, any e-commerce transaction can be done in a more effective manner through a common principles. So I think while we navigate the higher tariff from US, and then we have to make sure that our digital economy can be leveraged on in terms of providing opportunities for the SMEs, especially to pivot some of the business to capture the opportunities in the digital economy. I think that is something that at least safety net that we have to put in place to make sure that we can survive and strive and continue to grow in this challenging environment. I think that's my take on this thing.
Yeah, just to add to what Chetwan mentioned, I think there's been discussions recently. I think it's been reaching new highs around the ASEAN Digital Economy Framework Agreement. And I believe that's going to come in force, or hopefully it gets completed within the next year or so. Pak Sonny, you have anything to add? I think for Indonesia especially, right, when you talk about supply chain disruptions, something that's very, very important to the country as well as to the economy as a whole. Has there been any kind of plans around mitigation of this business models or with regards to supply disruptions?
So current global volatilities, I think has a low moderate impact to Indonesia and may present opportunities. Large part of GDP in Indonesia is domestic, so it less sensitive to international or political economy shock. And then Indonesia export to US is only 23% of the GDP, to US around 10% of the total export. And then we see like a highly affected sector like solar PV, fashion apparel, and electrical machine, that highly affected sector. But we also see that exploring opportunities because of this to improve efficiency of trade infrastructure, especially in the intra-ASEAN trade. And then we see to improve trade and investment terms with China and AU. As also we explore investment opportunities in US using our new Danantara and attracting US investment in Indonesia. I think that's what we are doing. And then with the key strategic team, we are focused on downstreaming of the natural resources industries and focus on investment growth in technology innovation and also climate change like renewable energy, because we have a lot of nickel and natural resources on this. And also right now we focus on healthcare and education digitalization. So I think Indonesia, this US tariff issue will settle to a moderate level, and then new government issue will be ironed out with time. Also, current growth as a 5% as the baseline for Indonesia.
Okay, that sounds quite positive, right? Even at 5%. So I think that's wonderful news. I'm half Indonesian as well, Pak Sonny, so I still have family in Indonesia, and it's great that you seem to think that the economy won't suffer that much. Director, we have another question here, which I think is more relevant for you. This question comes from Mohamad Shafiq Muhammad Tamis. Given the inherently competitive nature of startup ecosystems, how can we shift towards a mindset of collaboration across ASEAN? I think this touches on the question around like digital economic growth within ASEAN as well as in the Philippines. And in your view, what early wins can ecosystem builders focus on to build trust and enable startups to work together more easily across the region?
Okay, so well, let me start with what's really happening in the Philippine startup ecosystem. It's good that, we have regulations that are in place in terms of, say, providing startup visas for those who would like to come to the Philippines through that startup visa. The three agencies in the country, the Department of Science and Technology, the Department of Information and Communications Technology, and the Department of Trade and Industry, are the lead agencies in terms of promoting the Philippine startup ecosystem. Right now, I'm not really sure if we have really cooperation agreements within ASEAN, but of course, we're very much open for that. Previously, I know we worked closely with MDEC and also with Singapore as well, in terms of us bringing Filipino startups to these countries and be able to have B2B matching or even pitching to potential investors. And we also have this one international sort of event. We call it Geeks on the Beach. So because we also promote tourism here in the country. So we really love, and in fact, during that Geeks on the Beach, this is done annually. We attract different international foreign funders from the different parts of the world. And maybe that one can be a start of, a starting point where us ASEAN countries can collaborate, or maybe, Malaysia MDEC, or through our partners from Thailand and Indonesia, can also have that kind of platform that, we can work together. But definitely, we are very much open for collaboration.
Thank you, Director Emmy. And this leads to the next question by this next person is Indra Adnan, and I think this is a very good question, right? I think we talk a lot about ASEAN integration. We talk a lot about a common economic goal within the Southeast Asian markets, and there has been a lot of conversations around it. Obviously, the main example in this is the EU, which actually became a lot of people are calling it a failed experiment. So ASEAN is not rushing into creating a single economic bloc. But Indra asked this question, right, where somehow ASEAN is still seen as separate countries. Rightly so, right? It's a multitude of different countries. What are the biggest steps or gaps that you see that ASEAN can do to increase its resilience as a group, whether it's on tariffs or on the digital economy? Dr. Supakorn, I think this is a question we've spoken about before. Is this something that you think that what are the certain gaps and what can be done to increase resilience for ASEAN as a group?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So I think, well, because you mentioned this DEFA, Digital Economy Framework Agreement, I also see another partnership agreement called Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, which is basically ASEAN plus 5, which are Australia, China, Japan, New Zealand, and South Korea. And this already, been in effect since January 2022. So this is another good example, to promote multilateralism and regional cooperation as opposed to global protectionism. So I think lowering the tariff, and they aim to lower or eliminate about 90% of the tariffs, on imports between the ASEAN and plus the 5 countries over the years to come. So I think lowering the tariff is, of course, one of the key goal that we want to achieve, to promote cross-border trading.
Yeah, and if you can expand on that, especially with Malaysia taking over the chairmanship this year or leading the ASEAN chairmanship this year, in terms of combining or like reducing obstacles, what Indra has called as gaps between ASEAN's fragmented economies. Are there certain things that you see that can be done, especially when it comes to trade among ASEAN countries?
I think certainly there are opportunities. I think we know for the fact that ASEAN is pretty much diversified culturally because of the sporting regional physical condition of this part of the world. But I think a bilateral relation are quite strong. I just give the example on how, from our perspective, how do we work closely with Philippines, with Thailand, with Indonesia. We have an annual event, what we call DICT Connect, where we are bringing many companies for any inbound and outbound opportunities. So, because you look at ASEAN, it's going to be a $1 trillion digital economy size by 2030. So, we believe that most of the opportunities can be served within ASEAN ecosystem. That means there is enough ASEAN ecosystem to serve ASEAN market. So in that sense, while we may not have a block, we do not have a comprehensive framework in terms of coming out strong as ASEAN. But I think in terms of collaboration between countries, I think they are the very best stage at this point of time, where a collaboration that will give opportunities for both ecosystem, for both countries to flourish. So in that sense, we believe that can serve a momentum for us to be able to scale up any opportunities in ASEAN. And like you rightfully say just now, that is pretty much within the ASEAN chairmanship priority that we're putting in, where we have been engaging heavily with each and every ASEAN member countries on how do we prioritize what kind of sector they want to focus on, and how do we bring our ecosystem to make sure that they can have benefits and the best of both worlds in terms of, for example, like if Indonesian company goes to Indonesia, what will be the best partnership in Indonesia, and vice versa. If Indonesian company come to Malaysia, we can offer a similar setup to make sure that both countries can at least achieve a common agenda in terms of uplifting the digital economy. I think, and then another example I want to quote is a recent launch of the Singapore Johor Special Economic Zone. So that is an example of a regional cooperation through a physical framework where you can have a single economic corridor between the two countries because of the common agenda. Because I think as ASEAN, we need each other. So the only thing is what kind of value proposition that we can offer to our partners, and how do they reciprocate that thing to other countries. I think the foundation is quite strong. The only thing is how do we make sure that we can, because we cannot do all. We have to make sure that as a country, what kind of focus sectors, focus area that we want to develop, and to really work hard on that thing to make sure that it is giving socio-economic benefits to both countries. I think that is about the strategy that we should be looking forward in terms of strengthening that ties.
Yeah, thank you, Encik Wan. Just to expand on that again, I think what Encik Wan mentioned that I really liked was effectively around we are doing pretty well. You cannot look at totally open, totally full integration, especially when there are different cultural requirements, economic requirements, and the idea of comparative advantage within each ASEAN nation is obviously very different, right? So I think looking forward, there will be more communication, there will be more discussions around how these certain sectors can be integrated as well. And I think we've seen a few questions on the chat around that as well, around regulations when it comes to AI, around regulations when it comes to personal data protection acts. So I think that quickly sums up most of the questions that have been asked on the chat. There are more specific questions, which I'm afraid I think we are running out of time, so I don't think we have time to answer all the questions, but we will try to get them to you post the activities. So to round this up, because I think we have 5 minutes left, one final question for all our panelists is, when we look at tech adoption locally, whether it's in Thailand, in Indonesia, Malaysia, or the Philippines, we see that the large portion of tech solution providers, technology companies from which we buy solutions from, whether you're a government or private organization, tend to be American companies, right? The Oracles of the world, the Salesforce of the world, the Microsofts, Googles of the world. They are the largest tech companies by nature. They are the largest companies out of the US as well. And as a consumer of, say, American technology, I think what we've seen over the last few years is a lot of enterprises as well as a lot of local government agencies are looking to build or develop their own capabilities as opposed to just over-reliance on international technology. We are seeing that a lot as well when it comes to AI, right? When it comes to the localization of AI, open source AI has been quite popular in this part of the world. So I think before we go on, like we always worry about our exports to the US, but I'd like to, for the final question today, what about our imports from the US? How do you think that will change across the next few years? Not just from the US, any kind of imports when it comes to technology solution providers over the next maybe 2-3 years. Do you think that will change significantly as we go into this new era? Maybe just one by one, your thoughts about that as well. Maybe we can start with ladies first. Director Emmy.
Well, I would like to say that, the ongoing, the tariff tensions, we know have presented both challenges and opportunities. So for the Philippines, I would say that it's actually in the positive side because the Philippines faces the lowest average tariff at 17% among the 5 Southeast Asian countries. and of course with broad exceptions covering around 33% of its US bound exports, particularly in high value sectors like semiconductors and electronics. Of course, these positions is the country, favorably to would like we are actually it's actually favorable to the Philippines to attract diverted trade and investment, I would say. But as we know, there are a lot of opportunities, but there are certain challenges, I would say, like say limited infrastructure, investment, and manufacturing capacity. So to fully capitalize the advantage, so I would say that targeted improvements in logistics, investment facilitation, and export promotion are essential, I would say. So, but then again, when we talk, particularly our BPO industry, so when we talk to them, actually, it's not really, they have not felt any impact from the tariff impositions, and we hope that that will actually continue. So we're actually looking at the positive side of it. So meaning diversification and attract more investments because of that particular tension or challenge. So to an advantage side of it, a passive side of it, I would say.
Yeah. Thank you, Director. I mean, and I think Philippines as well as when it comes to again, just from historical perspective, I see more American restaurants in the Philippines than I see anywhere else in Southeast Asia, right? You love your Tim Hortons, your Chili's, your Dunkin' Donuts.
Yes.
So maybe that helped reduce the trade deficit between the Philippines and the US.
That's right. That's right.
Pak Sonny, your thoughts around this, especially when it comes to the consumption in Indonesia of, foreign tech, particularly American tech?
Yeah. I think in Indonesia, see that we can reduce reliance on US technology by started like building local infrastructure and prioritizing local solution, especially in public and private sectors. And then we can dive first tech partner, especially from China, Asia, or Europe. And also the last, probably invest in digital talent and also support regional startups with funding and collaboration between Southeast Asia countries member.
Fantastic. Thank you, Pak Sonny. Dr. Supakorn, your final thoughts on this for Thailand?
Yeah, well, I think particularly for AI, I think because now even though a lot of US providers are providing platforms to develop different AI solutions, but also we see a lot of open source AI engines as well. So I see a mix or a hybrid approach to this. So, some of the big companies, of course, we rely on, all the big names, providers.
Yeah.
For SMEs, I think also they're open to try out, other providers or smaller scale or local solutions as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Supakorn. And obviously, we've got to end with our ASEAN chairman from Malaysia, Encik Wan. Would you like your final thoughts around this, especially when it comes to like reliance on foreign or American tech?
I think we need that kind of scale of investments for us to grow. But what is more important is the imposition of certain conditions and criteria to make sure that our local SMEs, our local tech startups are benefiting from that kind of investment. So I think we are very clear of promoting that kind of investments, and also very clear in terms of support, in terms of programs that would uplift our local ecosystem from the perspective of technical capabilities, digital talent, and things like that. I think we can see how it can work hand in hand to make sure that those investments that are coming into Malaysia is going to create a spillover effect to our local ecosystem, and hence provide a platform for our companies to be able to grow not only in Malaysia but also to tag along with these tech giants to make sure that they can reach out to particular market in ASEAN and outside ASEAN. So I think it's a win-win situation that we have to put in place to make sure that everybody can grow together.
Fantastic. I think that echoes what Pak Sonny said earlier as well, right? So when it comes to consumption, we are looking for companies who are looking to invest locally, to provide tech talent as well, to develop local tech talents. And as well, there needs to be some stickiness with regards to the investment as well, right? I think we've all been through the 97 ASEAN Asian financial crisis where, all these, the foreign money was pulled out really, really quickly. And in a trade war, I think effectively that's generally the idea whereby protectionism takes precedence over long-term innovation. So with that, I'd like to thank all my four panelists today. I think we're just 1 minute overrun. Thank you very much for spending your Monday afternoon with us. And hopefully as you can see in the picture in my background here, right? This one here. These are all ASEAN beaches. So everybody here has mentioned how nice, geek on the beach. Dr. Supakorn mentioned digital nomads in Thailand. Pak Sonny is in Bali. And then Cik Wan, you have some wonderful beaches in Malaysia as well. In Singapore, we don't really have that, so we don't encourage people to come here for the beaches. Go to the rest of Southeast Asia for that. With that, thank you very much for today, and I look forward to meeting all of you again. If any of the attendees have any further questions, please reach out to your AIBP contact, and we'll be happy to address them post this session. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed the episode. For more information about business growth in the ASEAN region, please visit our website at www.aibp.sg.